What is up, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. So, if you've been on the internet watching guitar content, like you are now, then you have probably come across a brand of guitars that you might be a little kind of unfamiliar with. You might not really fully understand like what they are, especially if you're into Les Pauls, Gibson and Epiphone. You may have come across an Orville Les Paul. So what are these? That's the question we're going to answer today. Is what are the Orville guitars? So you won't just see Les Pauls. There's SGs, Flying Vs. I think there's Flying Vs, maybe. I don't know. There's a bunch of them. I mean, like if Gibson made it, there's probably an Orville version. 335s, etc. Right? So what these guitars are, in order to kind of unpack that, we got to go back in time a little bit. So, in the 70s, Gibson quality is, I don't want to say it's getting worse. That's going to be a controversial statement. A lot of people think 70s Gibsons are just bad. I don't. I happen to really appreciate 70s Gibsons. Those are the first ones I kind of saw. My dad has one. Those are the first ones I kind of fell in love with. So I have a soft spot for 70s Gibsons. Not everybody does. So they were changing some of the construction methods and having quality issues, stuff like that. So a bunch of overseas manufacturers started making clones and selling them for way cheaper. Now, you're going to hear a lot of hearsay on the internet about these lawsuit guitars, right? That's kind of a blanket term. It really only applies to one specific manufacturer. They're the only ones that ever actually had like a lawsuit brought against them. I'm not even going to get into that, but these like lawsuit era guitars, as they're referred to, you're going to hear a lot of people be like, they were Les Paul killers. You're going to hear the same thing about these, but we'll get there. They're Gibson killers, all this stuff, right? That's just not true. Okay, it's not. A lot of these guitars were really bad. A lot of them were coming out of Japan. They were built very poorly. A lot of the LP style guitars had bolt-on necks. A lot of the bodies were like kind of hollow and made out of like press board and that kind of stuff. Like a lot of them aren't great, but they were cheap and they were flooding the market as fast as they could, right? So people were buying them, and Gibson was kind of starting to feel it. Other manufacturers too. Fender was feeling it. Fender was having a lot of the same problems. And so Fender did the only logical step, right? If you can't beat them, join them. So Fender went to Japan and started building guitars in Japan. Right? So it took Gibson a lot longer to do for some reason. But Gibson decided to go to Japan and start having guitars built for them too. So that's what these are. These guitars were licensed by Gibson to be built for the Japanese market, but also to kind of compete with that lawsuit stuff that was flooding in and being real cheap. So they wanted to have a competitive product that was kind of in between Gibson and Epiphone that would be a, mid-level product, but good quality, right? Better quality than the knockoffs that were coming in, but not so good that they were going to really, infringe on like actual Gibson sales, right? So that was Gibson's plan with these. So when you hear people say, oh, these Orville Les Pauls are better than a Gibson, or these Orvilles are Les Paul killers, or whatever, right? Like, I've owned a few of these. They're not. They're good guitars, but they're not, right? I would put this, actually, you don't even have to guess where the quality of this lies, because I'm going to tell you some things about these guitars. They were built in a couple of different factories in Japan, and depending on what your serial number is, you can kind of figure out this one and the other one I own that looked just like this were both built at the Fujijin factory, or the Fujijin factory. Sure, I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce it. Now it's just, it kind of goes by the FGN factory. And you might have seen FGN guitars, right? So they have their own house line of guitars. I say house line. It's just their branding guitars, FGN. And they're great. And that's the factory that Fender Japan is built in. So that's kind of funny. You got the same place building Fenders and Gibsons, right? But that's where Ibanez Prestige guitars are made. Now, I don't know if you've ever owned Ibanez Prestige guitars, but I've owned a couple of them, and those are awesome guitars, right? I know some of the other factories are like factories that ESP would use for stuff, right? So these guitars are on quality with, you know, the Japanese Ibanez's, Japanese Fenders, Japanese ESPs, Japanese, you know, other brands that you might have come across, right? Like Bernie and Takai and stuff like that, right? So that's what this is. It is a licensed guitar built at another factory, licensed by Gibson, right? So they sent this factory all the schematics, you know, allowed them to use the proper headstock shape and dimensions and all that stuff, right? So you're getting I mean, this is a Les Paul. It's a mahogany body with a rosewood fretboard, a maple cap. Now, there's kind of some controversy about these tops on some of these, right? And I've heard that this is what's called like a photo flame. Fender did it for a while too. It's like literally just a picture of a flame maple top. I don't know if it's true or not. I legitimately don't know. But I will say this. The reason I bought this Orville is because I had an Orville and I loved that guitar, and I sold it for some reason because that's what you do, right? You don't play a guitar for a few months, you sell it. I instantly regretted selling it. And when I saw this one, I thought, that looks exactly like mine. And the guy I bought it from was like, well, the reason it probably looks exactly like yours is because it literally looks exactly like yours. Like they use the same picture of a flame maple top and put over this, right? And I pulled some old pictures of the one I used to have up, and they look exactly the same. So I don't know 100% if this is just a piece of paper that looks like a flame maple top, or if it's a veneer or what. I don't know 100%. And I'm not going to speculate, but I will say that it does look exactly like the other one I used to own. So take that for what you will, right? So this guitar came with some really neat pickups in it, right? I put a new bridge pickup in it, as you can see. That's just kind of my thing, and I'll get there. But the original pickups were made by Maxon, you know, who makes pedals and stuff, right? And they make pedals for Ibanez and a bunch of other people too, as well, their own branded pedals. But the stock pickups sounded really good. The bridge pickup was real clear and like articulate, really good, like low output PAF style pickups. Now, you know me, I wanted something a little hotter, but I didn't want to just throw like a Duncan or something in there, right? Like, I mean, I've done that before. I've got guitars with Duncans in them. I've got guitars with other pickups in them. I kind of wanted to go a little off the beaten path with it, right? So I found another Maxon pickup that's like their version of a DiMarzio Super Distortion, but it has an Alnico 5 magnet in it instead of a ceramic magnet. So I think it's called the V2, and I think they made this pickup for Ibanez, and I think it came in some Ibanez guitars. And I thought, you know what, that's cool. Like, it has the look. It's got this double cream bobbins. Like, you know, it was real high output. It was about 16K, which is what I like. So I bought that off Reverb and threw it in there. And it, you know, just to kind of keep with the vibe, right? Like, I didn't just want to throw something else in there. This guitar is kind of like its own thing. I wanted to kind of keep it that way. So that is the deal with Orville. Now, there is another guitar you might come across that will say Orville by Gibson. They look a little goofy. I don't like all the stuff kind of crammed on the headstock that way. But those are supposed to be like a step up from this. So, like I said, this guitar came with like Japanese electronics in it, which they're good. They're fine. They're full-size 500K pots. Like, they work great. Everything's great. It's got good full-size caps in it. Like, okay, had these Maxon PAFs. Sound great. And I've even seen them on Reverb before going for, like, pretty good prices. You know, a couple $100 for this set, right? Like, people aren't selling them on Reverb for, like, $50, you know. Apparently, they're, like, sort of sought-after pickups. But the Orville by Gibson guitars had Gibson pickups in them from the time period. So these guitars were only made for about like 10 years or so, like late 80s to late 90s, like 88 to 98, something like that. This is a 98 according to the serial number, if I interpreted it correctly and looked it up right. So this is kind of one of like the last year built. But the guitar plays great and it sounds great. So the stock pickup sounded awesome. I just wanted to kind of mod something because that's what I do. But the Orville by Gibson guitars, yeah, they had Gibson electronics in them, Gibson pickups in them. Supposedly, they were finished in nitrocellulose. I don't know about that. I've heard people say that. But then I've also seen some and held some. And I was like, I don't think this is nitrocellulose. And I've had other people say that too. This is polyurethane. So when people tell you, oh man, the Orvilles are such a good deal, they're Gibson killers. No, they're nice. They're really nice. But it feels like a polyurethane guitar. It doesn't feel like a nitrocellulose guitar. And again, that doesn't mean anything. It's just, if you're used to playing Gibsons, you know, poly's going to feel a little different. It's not going to feel like nitro. So this is definitely polyurethane. Like, you can just tell by holding it, but that's what the spec sheet says. It's poly. You know, again, if this is really like just a picture of a flame maple top, it looks nice, but that's a little goofy, right? You know, the tuners, they're just like unbranded Clusen style tuners, and they're fine. You know, the nut's fine. So like it looks like a nylon nut, like what older Gibsons would kind of come with. You know, it's a really good high quality guitar. But I think they get really overhyped. I think they get super overhyped online. It's not a Gibson killer. It's just not. It's a great guitar. But it is not a Gibson killer. But if you can come across one of these for a good deal, I highly recommend them. But the key there is a good deal. Since they're so overhyped online, people are asking kind of stupid prices for these. You know, I'll see like customs and stuff for like over $2,000, and I'm like, no, you know, no. It's just one of those things, like the rarity of them and the hype has kind of like hyperinflated the perceived value of them, right? A very comparable guitar to this is the new Epiphones, right, that are made in China, but they have all the Gibson electronics in them and stuff, and you know, pickups and everything like that, right? Like, this guitar was $1,500 brand new, I think, and it's the Adam Jones one, right? So you got to pay the artist tax, but like that new line that just came out, I think those are about $12.99 or something like that. So like, this is just as good of a guitar as this is. I mean, these are very comparable guitars. So that would kind of be my take on it, is if you come across one of these for a good deal, it's a cool thing to pick up. But I wouldn't go out there and, you know, get taken to town on it. I wouldn't spend a ton of money on one of these Orvilles. I just wouldn't. Because you can start to get into, like, you know, used Gibson territory real quick. And these things are old, and you kind of don't know what you're going to run into. So the other one I had some problems. I had to do a lot of work on it after I got it. So if you're not really into that kind of thing, just buy one of these new Epiphones. Right? It's going to be brand new. It's going to have a warranty. It's going to have all the newest modern Gibson electronics in it and stuff like that, right? Like, so that's kind of my take. I think these guitars are great. And I think they're really neat. They're a cool conversation piece. But I wouldn't really buy into like all the internet hype and the forum hype that you're going to see about like they're just as good as Gibsons or they're better, they blow them out of the water. And definitely don't go spend a ton of money, right? Like I had an amp sitting around that I wasn't using, and I took it to a local store that had this, and I traded that amp in, and I got this for like that amp and a couple $100. So I feel like I came out pretty good on this. I didn't go out and spend, a ton of money on it. So if you can find these for a good deal, definitely. That is the story of the Orville Guitars, kind of in a nutshell. The demo, get to hear this pickup in action. I used the STL Tones Will Putney Guitar Suite. I didn't do any post-processing on this at all. That guitar plugin has like post EQ in it, and you can like blend amps in it. So I blended 2 amps together, and I had put like everything's like contained in the plugin. So I didn't do any kind of like post stuff on this. So you're just hearing this guitar straight into that plugin with like a custom preset I made, and this cool Maxon V2 pickup. I think it sounds really nice. I think it sounds brutal. It's a really cool pickup. It's got a lot of low end in it, which is kind of neat. Modern pickups, they tend to be a little tighter focused, which I like, but it's kind of cool to have something different around that just has like kind of a more vintage vibe, like that vintage hot vibe to it. So hope you guys dig that, dig the story of the Orville guitars. If you've never seen them before, look them up, check them out. So it's just something neat and kind of different. So hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you're not subscribed to the channel. That really helps. I'm really close to 500 subscribers, which would be really cool to hit. So if you see the video and you're not a subscriber, subscribe. I got a bunch of other videos on here about Les Pauls and the music industry in general, because I work in the instrument business. So, leave a comment, and I will be back soon. Thanks.